everyone. I hope you're having a great day today. My name is Silja Litvin. As Pete just introduced, I'm a clinical psychologist and founder of PsycApps, the company behind eQuoo, and first and foremost, a psychologist. And when you study psychology, you learn all about diagnosis and symptoms and treatment, but you don't learn about the healthcare system. So sometimes it comes a little bit as a shock when you start working with patients. And for me, it was while I was working at the NELFT Eating and Mood Disorder Department of the Priory for an NHS here in London. And I was sitting in the assessment of multiple young adults that were telling me about like their journey to finally get to this session. And they had been on a wait list of 3 to 6 months, and they had had their first symptoms 3 to 4 years before they even got on that wait list. And so I kind of was thinking, why are they waiting so long, and why aren't they getting help earlier? So I kind of went and looked at the healthcare system and saw that even in the UK, where we have the NHS and we could practically get mental health care for free, only about 35% of all the people looking and needing mental health care get the mental health care that they need for various reasons. And I realized that even if I worked myself to the bone, I couldn't even scratch the surface of reaching all the people who needed mental health care. Plus, they would be seeing me way too late. I should have not just be seeing that person that was in my session 6 months earlier, but actually we should have been having conversations, or they should have had access to resources 4 years even before that. And preferably, these are the things that you would learn in primary school, like just psychological skills that build resilience and make it less likely for you to develop a mental illness. So I kind of thought, okay, I don't feel that I would make enough impact and I would be helpful enough if I just continued practicing and seeing, my maybe 30 patients at any given time. I would like to reach more people and add more value to like population, society in general. And I kind of looked at different ways. And this was in 2016, 2017, where there was emerging information that web-based interventions were as good as face-to-face therapy for certain populations. So they could be on your desktop doing cognitive behavioral exercises, and it was almost as effective as being sat in front of a psychologist. So I was thinking, okay, people are moving away from desktop towards application for private use. Why not make a mental health app? And in 2017, when you went into the App Store and you put depression in your search, you'd get maybe 50 to 100 applications max. So I built an application. I founded my company. I built the first application. We did a clinical trial, a 2-arm randomized control trial over 4 weeks, and could prove that using that app significantly lowered depression and anxiety levels up to the level of a beta blocker, but because it's a digital tool, no side effects. So I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to save the world from depression and anxiety for like $9.99. You're welcome, world. Unfortunately, the world did not want to be saved that way. So one of the issues with mental health, mobile and digital mental health tools, are the attrition rates. So any application will always have, that hockey curve unless you're Snapchat or TikTok or Instagram or something like that, right? So all of the apps have this kind of like falling down of usage over time. That's just to be expected. And you don't actually want someone to use a method for 20 years, right? It needs to have an effect at some point. But the Psychology Association says that on average, people spend 2 minutes on any given mental health app and then they delete it. That not only means that that specific app didn't help them, but that they may go away from that encounter thinking, okay, digital mental health is not for me either. So knowing that and kind of understanding that we're also dealing with a population where their symptoms of depression and anxiety, which are the 2 most widespread disorders, are not helpful in using an application all by yourself. So there's lack of curiosity, lack of drive, lack of motivation, cognitive impairment. So if you're too depressed and tired to get up and take a shower, you're not going to go and do your cognitive behavioral therapy exercises all by yourself, right? So I kind of was looking at this target audience that I'm particularly interested in, which is young adults, for multiple reasons. The main reason is that if you're going to develop mental illness, it's going to be, the symptoms are going to arise and manifest during that time period. So that's when you should latest have access to mental health care. Then there's a lot of other reasons for them. Like, there are so many life challenges and changes during this time. Like, you leave home, you have your first job, your first, you know, go to university, your first relationship, maybe you're having kids, all in between like 16 and 28 is where a lot of things happen, right? And then if you do have a mental illness, it's going to have a huge consequential effect on the rest of your life from a social and economic standpoint. So we just did a large clinical trial with over 1,200 students, and we asked them, has mental illness had, or mental ill health had an effect on your studies? And 10% of them said they had already left the university or were contemplating of leaving the university because of mental health issues. And these 10% might not get the job that will help them, you know, have the career that they wanted and take care of a family in the way they had expected, and so on and so on. So it's going to have a huge impact. And I really want to be able to contribute with something that helps people stay healthy. I don't want to just be about healing. I want about nourishment, thriving. So the whole idea, yes, the presentation will go on. I'm just making an introduction before I kind of go into the gamification. So the whole idea was, okay, how do you get people to stick to something that is good for them? Well, you have to, first of all, meet them where they are, right? And second of all, you have to cater to the way the brain processes information. And 70% of young adults are casual gamers. So that's where they are, right? And gaming casually already shows that it's good for your mental health. Plus, the brain is meant to learn through narration and play. So instead of kind of just taking your face-to-face therapy, turning that into words, and then having people work their way through those words in workbooks, or, you know, practically apps or digital workbooks these days for mental health, why don't you make it a game and you infuse the mental health learnings and the therapeutic impact into the game? And that's exactly what we did with eQuoo. So how do I get to the next slide? Ah, there you go. Excuse me. Our mission is to build the resilience and mental health of the global Generation Alpha to Z population. So my idea, sometimes people ask me, where do you see yourself being in 5 years? Like, I would love to be sat on a tube coming back from work around 6 or 7 o'clock, no matter where, Tokyo, America, London, you know, Munich, and see people on my left and right playing eQuoo on their way home. So meaning that doing something that helps them decompress, that helps them escape, that helps entertain them, but has a value beyond that. So that adds to their mental health, their well-being, their resilience, and lowers depression and anxiety. And that's what we're trying to do with eQuoo. Mental health right now is probably on the forefront of a lot of the social discourse and conversations. And, you know, I dare you to go on LinkedIn or Facebook and scroll for 5 minutes and not come across at least one mental health statistic that is a little bit frightening. And since COVID, we've seen the number that we used to use as kind of like a, you know, help people understand how many people are impacted by mental health. We used to say 1 in 4 struggle with mental ill health or will struggle with mental ill health at one part in their lives. Now we're down to 1 in 2, because, you know, people simply aren't built to live under the restrictions of a pandemic. So while the demand rises on for psychological care, we need to find a way to be able to cater to that demand that is evidence-based, and are able to actually do what it's supposed to do, because the best application in the world is not going to help anyone if people don't stick to it, right? And so it has a huge impact on education. Then 5% of all insurance claims go to mental health itself. So, you know, from accidents, back pain, birth, everything, 5% of that is mental health. Plus, mental health can actually go quite bad. So there's going to be a slide a little bit further down. But here you go. That just kind of shows that when we talk about mental health, some people automatically think mental illness or mental ill health, but it's actually the whole spectrum. So we're looking from people who have high well-being, they're overachievers, they have all the skill sets plus the resources that they know they can get help, they're very resilient, and they're doing well in life. It doesn't mean that they're famous or rich or anything, it just means that they're happy and balanced. And then we have people on the other end of the spectrum that we lose to suicide. And between that, we have all the different shades of mental health and mental illness. And where we are with eQuoo right now is that we are for the lower end of the spectrum. So anybody who's interested in personal development, personal growth, who just likes psychology and wants to understand themselves better and how to better connect with other people, those are psychological skills that we teach. People in vulnerable situations, and right now during COVID, like who isn't in a vulnerable situation, right? And then people experiencing first symptoms of depression and anxiety, so low threshold. That's what we take care of eQuoo right now, and that we have evidence through multiple clinical trials. We have recently, in our latest clinical trial, be able to prove that we also have a large impact on people who are post-threshold, so are already showing high symptoms of depression and anxiety, and up to the level of an IAPT service. So like IAPT is improved access to therapeutic therapies. So 6 sessions of cognitive behavioral therapy with an NHS educated counselor has about the same effect size, even a little bit less than the game for people struggling with depression and anxiety in a post-threshold. So it's quite effective. On a kind of like population, like what the game is built for the needs and consumer habits of young adults. But if you look at kind of who resonates with the game most, from non-gamers who don't even have like Tetris or Angry Birds on their phone to people who are professional esports, esportlers, we're on the lower end of the spectrum. So people who are either not players or they're casual gamers, because we know we're a startup, we're not heavily funded. Give me 50 million and I will make you a Fortnite for mental health, but we're not quite there yet. And then from an age perspective, built for young adults, we have one user that I know of who's 72 and she absolutely loves the game. So it doesn't mean that the older you get, you won't like it, but the probability is that it will resonate more with a younger audience. So late education to early career, that's what the game was meant for and built for. Because in psychology, sometimes you have to start quite focused. You do one area really well, and psychology is very personal, right? So what a lot of people try to do with their products is they try to cook the ocean and they can't even get up 1 degree. Or we took a bathtub out and we're cooking that bathtub well. And then to kind of give you an idea of what the game looks like is you come into the game, you are introduced to the lore, the backstory, the mythology of the game that says that all the evil, greed, and corruption in the world has gelled and become an actual being, and it's going around snuffing people's inner light out. And you have been called to become what is a lodestar, so a group of people who have gone on the path of psychological transformation to be their best selves and bring that light back, right? So you build your avatar, you are kind of introduced to becoming a lodestar, and then you learn for each level 1 to 4 psychological skills based on cognitive behavioral therapy, systemic psychology, positive psychology. Once you've learned that skill, you are then catapulted into a choose your own adventure story where you play yourself, but you have to implement the psychological skill you just learned in the environment to be able to level up and collect gems. And while you do that on a regular basis, a chat up, you can pop up and you can actually then see how well you're doing over time and get that feedback. And for example, if you're not doing too well, then it will be able to triage you to a website from the NHS, to a private website, or just to more resources depending on your needs. So is learning psychological skills and then be able to get feedback about your mental health, get triaged and more help. At a later point, you'll be triaged to parts in the game that have through FDA approval, for example, are meant specifically for depression and anxiety and have that. And then being able to just practice those skills and understand more about life. And it has a huge impact. So we got skills that are easy to understand, easy to implement, and you instantly feel the effect of it. And they're all evidence-based. So that's not skills that I just made up because I said, okay, this could work. These are skills that are used in cognitive behavioral therapy, positive psychology, all over the world. And so far, we've had 4 clinical trials under our belt and have been able to show some really strong results about raising resilience, which is the biggest predictor of not developing a mental illness, lowering anxiety, which is the largest mental illness in the world and most widespread, and then lowering depression, which is the second most widespread disorders, as well as growing interpersonal relationship skills and personal growth skills. So that's pretty much where we are right now. So far, we've had over 580,000 downloads. We've partnered with Unilever. We are going very strong into the learner space. So colleges, secondary schools, universities, and corporations that have a lot of young adults. So my dream is that the end consumer doesn't have to pay for access, but that they get it gifted from their employer, their school, their insurance company, something, so that they can have the benefits of it without having to carry, the burden of their own costs. Okay, so that was pretty much the introduction to eQuoo and how you can gamify clinical psychology. And oh my gosh, almost forgot the most important part before I go into Q&A, and you can ask me anything, is that making it a game works in a way that retention is much less of an issue. So we have 63% month 3 retention. And if you look at a lot of products out there, like even like a Headspace, they have month 1 retention of 15%. So making it a game allows people to enjoy and want to come back. It's not homework, it's not work, it's just a game. All right. Does anybody have any questions about anything? I'll go back to the screen with the pictures. Oops, one screen, sorry, I went too far. There. Any questions?
There's like a 20-second delay on the chat. So feedback so far, your story is brilliant. For me, having interviewed you in the past, but only on a podcast, it's great to see the images to go with what we were talking about. And I'm loving the numbers of people who've downloaded the app already.
Yeah.
Go on.
It's just wonderful to know. So it's in 4 languages, and our biggest group of downloads through Unilever is Indonesia. And to know that there's someone sat in Indonesia playing the game, getting the benefits and enjoying it and giving us feedback is just like, it's mind blowing and it's absolutely beautiful. And it just shows that sometimes you have to be creative to help solve a problem.
Yeah, I quite agree. And that's a pretty big market as well. So we've got our first question. I think we've got time for 1 or 2. So let's have a look. Let's stick it on the screen, and then let me just. There.
Can they also become professionals in the psychology area after this gamification? So no, you don't get a certification of any kind. I mean, you get a certification that you've gone through a resilience program after 7 weeks. So I guess that's a bit professional, but you can't go and treat people after that. But you will be a more balanced individual with healthier relationships and being able to react more beneficial in stressful situations, for example.
That's cool. So you'll be resilient when you're rejected for the job in the psychology.
Exactly. You will know that it's tough. And it doesn't mean that, life isn't going to throw curveballs your way and that's going to hurt. But it just means that you will have the resources to be able to deal with it in a way that you will be able to emerge well.
Cool. I'm going to take one more. This is from Albert. Had you done any testing of the app with and without a narrative?
Oh my God, you sound like my professor. No, so in our clinical trial, our control group was a group of people who used another evidence-based application called Cinvello that teaches the same skills without the narrative, but it's not exactly the same. So the best control group would have been exactly our content without the narrative, which we haven't done yet. But we've used the best second possibility, just an evidence-based application teaching the same skills without narration.
I think that's a good answer. Well, Thank you so much, Silja. That was a brilliant talk. I love the story. And if anyone wants to put virtual applause in the chat, I think that'd be much appreciated. It was great.